Today we are taking a look at a Sunny video. It's been a while since we've reacted to a Sunny video. Always some cool takes from over on the OCG side of things. And today we're touching on a topic that I actually wanted to, or that I have talked about this beforehand. Sunny made a video. Should the TCG adopt OCG rarities? And I think this is a very interesting topic, and I am very interested to hear about this from an OCG player's perspective, because of course, I have been a huge fan in the past of the OCG rarity system, where I would just love for Yu-Gi-Oh to be more accessible to more people. And I always thought, like, hey, in the OCG, they have this system where, I guess for context for anyone before we jump into this video, because I don't know how well it's explained here, the OCG rarity system, what we mean by this is basically in the OCG, most or all of their sets, even the core sets, have cards come in multiple rarities. So kind of like the rarity collection. I don't think it is exactly like the rarity collection, but basically, like, I don't know, like they're showing here, Dominus Impulse was apparently a $9 card in the OCG, even though it has the same power level over there, right? But I think that is because it is printed in multiple rarities. So like there's a low rarity version of Dominus Impulse and a high rarity version of Dominus Impulse. And I've always been a fan of this idea. You know, I've always been a fan of this idea conceptually, because I want cards to be cheaper in order for more people to be able to play the game and enjoy the game, because I do think the price is one of the bigger boundaries when it comes to entering Yu-Gi-Oh! Of course it is. And so I wonder why. I mean, as someone who is not super I'm not super familiar with like marketing and stuff like that. Like I have like a very broad understanding, or like a very just little understanding of how these things work. I've always wondered what potential reasons could they have to not do the same thing. And maybe getting the OCG player's perspective on this can help. Because I do believe Sunny has played in both TCG and OCG.
With the recent release of Duelist Advance, there's been a growing concern in the TCG that boxes are consistently unable to retain MSRP pricing, and it is primarily because
this is what sparked it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Duelist Advance is a set that is not that great to open. I think that is the underlying problem here. Which is it's basically, the way I feel about it, it feels like a paradox, because whenever a set is good to open, whenever a set does really well in terms of the monetary value, and it does really well for the vendors, it's always the ones that have like super expensive cards in it, right? Like the ones where there's Wanted, Dia Bellstar, when there is Dominus Impulse, and so on and so forth, right? It's like it almost seems like the sets that are good for the vendors are not good for the players, and the sets that are good for the players are not great for the vendors, right? Because Duelist Advance for the players is not a bad set, because it's not that expensive to pick up the stuff. No matter what you want from Duelist Advance, there is no $80 Dominus Impulse. There is no Dia Bellstar, no Wanted, no whatever, which of course makes the set worse to open. But like it's better for the people that just want to grab like the stuff they want from the set and move on, right? Like they're just grab the new cards and play with them. This set is great for that, right? But of course you still have people complaining because it's not a sustainable model for stores, because in order for you to be able to buy your $20 Sky Striker A0 or whatever it is right now, or like, well, you know, your quote unquote cheapish secret rares, like I think a secret rare that goes like 10 to 20 bucks can be considered decently affordable from a TCG perspective. In order for you to be able to buy those, someone has to open the product. Someone has to open the product, which they spend like 50 bucks on. I don't know how much a store buys a box for, but like in order for you to buy your $4 Finmel, and your $10 Gorgon of Zilophonia or whatever, someone has to have opened a box that had those cards in it, which is not great, right?
The sets are far too bad to open. It's a dilemma that's incredibly difficult to solve because preserving the interests of both the players by making cards affordable and the interests of local game stores by making product valuable appear to be zero-sum.
Yeah.
As a result, the TCG adopting OCG rarities is a discussion that comes up frequently and is often considered one of the leading ways to fix the issue of card prices. I think if the
So essentially the idea is that if you make cards low rarity and high rarity at the same time, the ideal way this pans out is like the low rarity card is the one that's cheap and affordable for everybody, and the high rarity card is the one that carries the value of the box, right? Like the chase cards in the set that everyone goes wild over, that makes it still worth opening the product, and makes it worth opening, which is, I feel like, I guess that's kind of what they've been trying to do with Starlights and QCRs, right? Like they are attempting to put some chase cards in there, I suppose. And I do think that Starlights and QCRs have done a little bit in that regard. You know, like if you open up a box of Duelist Advance, if you get a Starlight, that is one way to potentially make the box worth opening. The thing is that even the Starlights, or for previous sets, the QCRs, they can vary a decent amount in terms of value because not all of them are actually chase cards. You know, like I feel like the selection for QCRs and Starlights was not the best because the rule was just, hey, every ultra rare or higher can be a Starlight or QCR. I don't think that's the best thing to go about it, the best way to go about it. I feel like they should reserve the Starlight spot for something that's definitely good. Basically, because they know what cards are going to be sought after most of the time when they make these products, right? They know, you know, Dominus Impulse, sought after card, we're making it secret rare. What if instead of doing that, they do, okay, we know Dominus Impulse is going to be one of the chase cards, so we make that one of our, let's say they only pick 10 Starlights per set or something, right? And then we have an actual chase card on our hands, right? But I feel like when every single Ultra becomes a Starlight, it kind of takes away from this.
TCG adopted both OCG rarities and ratios, and the game did not die soon after, it would be better for the game's longevity overall. However, it is unfortunately an unsustainable model for Yu-Gi-Oh! In the West, and stores would be unable to survive the transition. The main reason is that there aren't enough casual players or collectors in the West, and as a result, there aren't enough players who will buy products at a consistent and significant loss.
This is something that people always say, like, and this is hard for me to judge, honestly, where, like, people always say, like, oh, Pokemon does this so well. And I've also said this in the past, like, it seems to be working so well for Pokemon, where Pokemon has, like, low rarity cards and then, like, fancy looking alt arts that are, like, that are the ones that people are chasing for, and that's what people are opening boxes for, and so on and so forth, right? And I just don't, because in some ways Pokemon is a great thing to compare to because it is another card game. In another way, I think Pokemon as an IP works very differently than Yu-Gi-Oh! Because, like, it is much bigger. It is much bigger than Yu-Gi-Oh! And I also think that, like, I think there is more people that collect Pokemon. Opening Pokemon is so extremely neg, it's not sustainable. I think that's another thing, right? I think that's another thing that it feels like opening a Pokemon box is, you're still not, I don't think they're great to open value wise. I think people still open it because it's Pokemon, but I think if you were really about it, you would also just rather buy singles in Pokemon and never touch a booster box.
I think this opinion has a lot of pushback, mainly because Western players do not know exactly how inexpensive cards are in the OCG. First, we have to go over how current stores get product in the TCG. Stores order sets from distributors about 5 to 6 months before the set is released. This means they have to order sets even before the cards are leaked in the OCG, so they have no idea if the set is good or bad. They can make educated guesses. For example, duelist packs are usually bad and deck build packs are typically good, but not only is that not always reliable, but they are also heavily incentivized by distributors to buy every single product. They're not forced to buy every single product, but they will be a lower priority for future releases if they don't.
There are arguably some products where, like, Yu-Gi-Oh would probably just be better off if some of these side sets just didn't exist. Which, like, I'm not talking like Justice Hunters, because that set's going to be great. But I'm talking like the Legendary Duelists, for example, or maybe even Battles of Legends. I don't actually know if Battles of Legends was a good set for the vendors, or I mean, I guess it's not out in EU yet. But like, maybe, like, because this is true. I think, like, if you are a Yu-Gi-Oh store, or you offer Yu-Gi-Oh in your store, you are obviously incentivized to have every product in stock, you know, because that's obviously, like, the people that are distributing these packs are, like, they're not going to let you pick and choose only this one and then not that one. It's also weird towards your customers, you know, like, if you just don't have a certain set in stock. Some of these side sets have just not been great, and I feel like it would have done better if those cards had just been sprinkled in, like the good cards from those sets, the good reprints, or maybe even some of the good new cards. They could have been sprinkled in into other products. You know, there could have been structure decks instead, which would have been way cheaper. But still, structure decks can still be great value-wise, you know, because if a structure deck is good, then those are going to be popping off, even for vendors. Like, the structure decks can be great as well, which I think is underused. And also, you can just make like 1 or 2 products less a year, and just use those reprints or use those new cards to juice up some other products. You know, like, what if instead of having like a side set that isn't great overall, you just throw those cards, or some of those cards, like the good cards, you add them to the mega pack or whatever, right? And that makes that product better. So, like, you get what I'm saying, right?
End up buying them, which means stores end up having to buy a lot of bad sets. If the product is good, then they can make a lot of money, but that assumes the product has good expected value. If the EV is low on sets, then people will not buy them. We can look back at any bad set in the TCG, whether that be Hero's Revenge, Duels from the Deep, or Duels Nexus. Not only are some of these sets still on shelves today, but even the box price on websites such as...
Yeah, it just becomes a thing where, of course, everyone is interested in these sets when they come out. But, like, people realize relatively quickly, and vendors realize relatively quickly as well, that, like, the singles in these boxes, they don't make it worth opening. Unless you just want to open it, right? Like, unless you are just really excited to open a box and maybe do a little gamba, and maybe you get lucky, but, like, the expected value of opening it is negative, right? Which I guess in some ways is normal for this kind of hobby. I don't know if there's any, I mean, I don't think there is a box where you're always going to plus on average, right? Like, if that was a thing, then the boxes would just sell for more, right? That it doesn't really, at least from an outside perspective at, like, markets and stuff, I'm not super familiar with it. But if there was a box where the expected value, let's say there's a Yu-Gi-Oh box where the expected value of you opening a box is like $100, then can you buy that box for 60? There's no shot, right? Like, it has to be somewhat negative, right? Otherwise, no one would be selling the boxes, right? Like, who would sell a box for $60 that you on average pull $100 out of? I don't know. Yeah.
TCG player goes down when a set is bad. You may be thinking, that doesn't make sense because the OCG also gets bad sets, but the dilemma is that the good sets in the OCG would be considered bad sets in the TCG in terms of expected value if they adopted OCG rarities and ratios. So why does any of this matter? What do OCG rarities have to do with the expected value of a set? Well, the reason sets have any expected value is because there are cards that players need and they are not easy to pull. The OCG doesn't have that problem, which means sets from a financial perspective are completely worthless to open. However inexpensive you think our cards are, they're most likely even less than you think.
Okay, so here's my question. If what you say is true, which I can imagine it being true, I can imagine with whenever you hear about OCG card prices, they are super low, right? If OCG boxes are really so bad to open because all of the cards are so cheap, why is the concept working for them? Like, why are people still opening boxes? Because clearly they are. Otherwise, Yu-Gi-Oh would have died in the OCG like 10 years ago or 15 years ago if no one was opening or playing it, right?
This is a massive problem for the stability of local game stores.
Okay.
I'm going to be using the most recent set, Duelist Advance, as an example, and the prices come from Jihuanshe, which is my country, China's TCG player equivalent. Prices across the
Watch
OCG
the video. I mean, yeah, I know they're going to talk about it. I'm just throwing what I'm thinking, my questions into it, because otherwise you could just watch the video by yourself.
Not always uniform, but I would say in general they tend to be pretty similar. China and Japan usually have almost identical prices, for example. These prices on screen right now were from release day, which means these are the peak prices for the low rarity copies of these cards. The prices displayed on screen are in yuan, but I'll convert them to US dollars because it's easier for most
I was waiting for that because I have no idea what this means.
People to convert US to their own currency. I'll go over the ratios first. With Duelist Advance, they changed QC SERs to PSERs, or Starlights as I call them in the TCG.
Okay.
For some reason, the ratios aren't super consistent for this set. So instead of 6 Starlights in a case of 24 boxes, you can sometimes get up to 8. So the ratio tends to be...
Didn't you go to Japan though? Yeah, but this is not Japanese yen, I don't think. Because if this was Japanese yen, this would basically be... In Japanese yen, this would be 7 cents, basically. I don't think it's that.
A bit more than 1 in 4 boxes. This got a lot worse because before, the +1 box topper pack you got in the box had 4 QC SERs in the case.
Yeah.
And then they took them out of the
Which for that one, I have no idea what the conversion
rate is. It's about
is.
10 QC SERs per case before, and then you just cut 4 of them. It doesn't matter too much in terms of actual value because the majority of QC SERs were bulk anyways, but it is still a negative.
This is the problem I mentioned earlier, by the way. The fact that they are considering most of the cards that come in the highest rarity, which is QCRs, or now Starlights, if they consider those bulk, I think there's a problem with the selection of those cards. I think that's not great. I think you need to do better, or they need to do better in both OCG and TCG, apparently, at selecting the cards that come in QCR. I don't think it needs to be like, oh, everything that's ultra rare has to have a QCR. I think you can have a more exclusive selection of cards for your highest rarity. Yeah.
For Ultimates and Secrets, you could expect about 1 per box starting with Infinite Forbidden up to the current day, and then you would pull about 3 ultra rares and 6 to 7 super rares per box. This seems pretty good until you start to cover the actual value of the individual cards. First, we can cover Starlights. Unless you pull a Striker Starlight, then you don't even get your box back. Think about it like this. Holy Sue is the best non-splashable engine card in the entire game at the moment. It's played at 3 copies in the most popular deck that also has the best results, and even a Starlight copy of this card would not pay for 1 box on release. If your Starlight or QCR does not have any sort of collectability or is not incredibly splashable in multiple different decks such as Dominus Impulse, then it won't pay for your box. Even if you get lucky enough to pull a Starlight, it could easily be one of the bulk $5 to $7 Starlights no one wants. So now we can address cards guaranteed in the box, which are...
Wait, did they mention the conversion rate? Because they're just scrolling through this, and I didn't catch what the conversion rate was. They didn't say, right? Okay, let me look it up. Let me use dollar as well. Is this the right currency? I think so. So they said, let's take the Holy Sue. It was $290. So it's a $40. It's a $40 QCR, a $40 Starlight. And the box was 300, so their boxes are $42 roughly. Okay. So once again, hold up. One is okay. $1 is 7. Okay.
1 secret and ultimate, 3 ultras, and 6 to 7 supers. The highest secret in the set is the Art Magia secret, which is about 50 yuan or about $7. And then the majority of secrets were worth $1 or less.
Okay.
The highest ultimate is Sky Striker S0 at 115 yuan or about $16. But this card is an absurdly expensive ultimate rare. Pretty much no set in recent times have had an ultimate rare worth this much. Even Engraver was less, and that card was a 3 of in almost every deck at the time. The highest value ultra in the set is the Art.
I mean, that's the thing, right? If we are looking at these prices, it seems like a dream, right? It seems so good when all of these cards are so relatively cheap. Because even the Holy Sue we just looked at for $40 was like the Starlight Rare version, which is not the one you are forced to play if you want to play the deck.
Magia Ultra, and it costs about 18 yuan on release or $2.50. And then the rest of the ultras are bulk. The highest value super on release was Holy Sue at 12 or $1.67. And then the Art Magia super is similar value, but the rest are bulk.
Yeah, Holy Sue here is less than $2.
It's even worse now, a month later. Let's start with the Starlights. The cards that double as collectible and playable cards, such as the Striker Starlights, are doing well, but let's take another look at Holy Sue. Ignoring the 99 yuan copy, which has 2 puncture damage, the lowest Starlight Holy Sue is 140 yuan, or about $20. For transparency's sake,
20.
This copy is not max rarity in China. In China, we have 2 types of Japanese cards: Korean factory printing and Japanese factory printing.
Oh, do they have EU versus NA printing, but OCG version of it? I've never heard of this.
We call Korean printing Hong Kong printing, but they're made in Korea, just in case you can read Chinese and you're confused why the listings will say Hong Kong when I'm saying Korean. These differences primarily matter for secrets, starlights, and QCRs.
Okay.
You can think of it as an NA versus EU difference, with NA being the Korean printing and EU being the Japanese printing.
Okay.
There's a slight color difference, with Korean factory being brighter most of the time.
I can't really tell from this picture, to be honest with you. Maybe the right one is slightly brighter here at the top, but yeah.
And the Japanese cardstock is considered to be higher quality, although I can't tell because both are much higher than the TCG cards.
Yeah,
and the foil between the dots and the lines are also flipped. Japanese copies are worth...
The foil is flipped? Oh yeah, this goes upwards. What is it, vertical? And this is like horizontal. Okay, yeah, that I can see. That I can see.
Slightly more in China, and I have heard that Korean printing is more expensive in Japan, but I'm not 100% sure if that's true. Since this listing didn't specify, I'm going to assume this means they're referring to Korean printing. The lowest Japanese printing, which would be considered true max rarity, is 188 yuan, or $26, which is about normal.
Essentially, they're covering a lot of prices right now, but I think what I'm getting from this is that what they are saying is, yes, card prices are extremely low in the OCG, even for the sought after cards, which is the one that everyone wants. That's what all the players want, right? But their point, I think, is that this still leaves the same problem of these boxes are terrible to open, which is dangerous for stores, I think is what they're saying, right? They're saying like, yeah, it looks really good for all the players from the outside, but it is like it's a difficult model to make it work for the stores that are buying these products, right? I think that's somewhat of what they're saying, right?
Usually the difference is about 20%, so max rarity Holy Sue is only a bit more than half of the box. Secrets have completely tanked. There's one card worth almost $5, 6 cards between $2 to $4, and the other 13 are under $1. If we look at Ultimates, Zero still retains about $10 of...
It only works because the game is so big in the OCG. I don't know if that's a good argument, because I don't know if like the scaling of it matters that much. Because if a box is a net negative, then it doesn't matter how many you open. I don't know how much it matters that you scale it up by 10x or whatever, Because if you're losing money on average on one box, you're gonna lose money on 10 boxes. You're gonna lose money on 100 boxes and on 1,000. Like I don't that it doesn't scale well.
Value, but everything else is bulk. For ultras, only the Art Magia fusion is about $2, and then everything else is bulk. For supers, only the lower tier guide is a bit more than $1, and everything else is bulk. If I highball the value from a good Duelist Advance box on release day, let's say you pull the best secret out of 20 secrets and you have $7. And then you pull the best ultras and have another.
The best secret is the best secret being $7 is obviously a dream for everyone that buys singles, but I feel like I'm getting where I understand where they're getting at, because when you open a box, that is going to feel terrible.
$4.
Right?
And then you get the best super and add another $2. Let's say you hit the 1 in 4 good ultimate as well, and you get $16 from the 0. We are working with $29 of the $42 from the best possible box without the Starlight.
Yeah, no, people would be furious about this in TCG. That is 100% true, right? If you pull the best secret, the best ulti, which I mean, ulti is just a rarity that we don't get in the main boxes, but like their point is saying, it's like in the TCG, you pulled the best 2 secrets from the box and the best ultras from the box, and you still went Nick. That's basically what this comparison is, right?
And pulling half of the Starlights in the set would still make you lose out. This is not counting fees or any sort of reduction in price that you'll have to have as a secondary market seller. Most of the time, you'll struggle to even get $10 back because 3 and 4 boxes won't pull Sky Striker Ace 0, and many older sets didn't even have an expensive ultimate rare to pull. And more importantly,
so basically what they're saying is most of the time you don't even pull $10 out of a box in the OCG unless you get really lucky, and the boxes are about $40. So you pull your box, you go like 75% neg, right, in the OCG if you buy a box of Duelist Advance, which would be, let's convert this to TCG. It would be like if you bought a $60 box and you lost, you pulled $15, right? Is basically the equivalent of that.
These prices tend to depreciate very quickly. By the third day after release, I was already capable of buying a playset of Holy Su for 9 yuan, or a bit more than $1. I'm using release day prices to show the ceiling of a box if you buy one on release and sell to someone very close to the place where you purchase a box, but this is not actually reflective of reality. Prices are much worse than what I'm estimating here. It's not like I'm cherry picking some extremely garbage set either. Duelist Advance is not a great set value-wise, but it's not too different from Alliance Insight and Supreme Darkness. Duelist Advance had a significant meta impact with multiple good decks such as Lunalight, Onomat, Vanquish Soul, or Sky Striker, and even the Art Magia cards are being bought as an investment for future support. Vanquish Soul is the most played deck of the format, widely loved, and is the most winning deck of the format at the moment. Striker is one of the most popular archetypes of all time, and this support makes it meta for the first time in years. Duelist Advance is also the newest set before the World Championship qualifiers. You can check the Asian markets yourself. If I had selected any of the older sets, it would not look much different, except for Rage of the Abyss. But that set had 2 staples played at 3 copies, and even then, you still barely got a third of your box value back if you managed to pull both of them.
That is crazy, right? If you pulled, what they're saying is, if you pulled Impulse and Fuva in the same box, you got a third of your box value. Right? Because here, the box costs $40, and Impulse is $10, and Fuva is $6.
Most sets in the OCG are as bad as Duelist Advance. Lower rarity cards do not have value in the OCG with few exceptions, and for a box to have solid EV, you need multiple cards with value that you can consistently pull. So the question is, would TCG players buy this product? I don't think they would buy this as much as the current boxes they have in the TCG already. You can say more rarities makes the product more fun to open, but if the value isn't there, then it's hard to imagine they would buy more boxes. They would probably just buy more singles, especially when buying singles online.
I think this is true. I think the majority of people, if that's the deal, would just go and buy the cheap singles, which would obviously, it would make the game more affordable to people, and that is ultimately what I want. But still, you have to factor in that if if stores are already having a tough time right now with some of these boxes, someone has to open these boxes. And if players are not opening boxes and want to buy singles instead, the only people that are left opening the boxes is the vendors. And if the vendors are opening a bunch of boxes that lose 75% of money on average, they are going out of business hella quick. Right?
Mine is already so easy. Unless you live in Canada.
There's no vendor who's going to open a bunch of boxes at 75% negative. There's no way. Nothing else you do as a vendor is going to make up for that loss. That is crazy.
Yes, but then you have to price someone on DNK has your cards. Maybe the TCG could just copy the rarities and not the ratios, but that defeats the primary purpose of OCG rarities, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's not about the rarities. I think it's not about how the cards look. It's about the how often you pull them, right?
Make the game more affordable. Some people cite Rarity Collection as an example of OCG model working in the TCG.
Yeah.
Rarity Collection is not the OCG model. Okay. It might have OCG rarities, but those are special sets for us as well. Rarity Collection would be more similar to our Quarter Century Art Collection or Pride and Unity sets. First, pulling 6 QCRs in a box is not the norm.
Okay, that is actually true. That is true. You know, it's not just about how the cards look, what they just said. It's also about how often do you pull those cards, because you do not get like when we say OCG rarities, it is true that we are kind of, or that I was kind of ignoring the fact that you don't pull 6 Starlights in one box in the OCG, right? Like you do in the Rarity Collection. Rarity Collection is a special set because also Rarity Collection has like a lot higher density of good cards, right? So a lot of not every QCR you pull in a Rarity Collection, but most, or like a decent chunk of the QCRs you pull are going to be cool cards, you know? Like even if it's like not the most meta card, but like they're still going to be like 5 to 10 or whatever. Like even the somewhat weaker, there's some terrible ones, but like the majority I think are decent cards.
Earlier, the QCR ratio was about 1 in 4 boxes, not 6 per box.
Yeah, 1 in 4 boxes for a QCR/Starlight is actually the same in TCG in terms of the rarity of that, the premium rarity.
Second, even if Rarity Collection were a good representation of OCG products, they are not guaranteed to do well, especially if every set were a Rarity Collection. Rarity 1 and 3 did fantastic because those 2 sets were extremely good, but Rarity 2 wasn't very good at first and also had a dip in prices for the sealed boxes. It's not like if you implement OCG rarities, people are just guaranteed to buy the set. You can even say Rarity 2, which was one of the worst Rarity Collections, did well, but that's also because Rarity Collection is not the norm. If every set were Rarity Collection, people will not be mass buying bad sets just for Rarity Collection ratios. Furthermore, Rarity Collection is also heavily skewed toward QCRs. Almost everything under a QCR will not hold much value, which is a big problem because that means that your box value is almost entirely on 6 cards. For every great QCR such as seals, there's going to be 5 bulk QCRs such as Twin Twisters that can't even return what you paid for 1 pack. And it gets even worse because there's a finite amount of good staples that can be reprinted in the first place.
No, I think that is not it's looking back at it, this is not a great point to make. Like not every set can be exactly like Rarity Collection. But I think it's less that, I guess I personally don't want every set to be Rarity Collection. I just want I want the Rarity Collection thing to continue because I thought that was such a good concept. And I was wondering if there was a way to find a better balance on the main sets, right? Because that's basically what all of this is about, is like the TCG model has flaws. And I really like that this video is showcasing that the OCG model seems to have flaws as well. So I guess that begs the question of, can we find is there a middle ground? Is there a way to make sets solid for vendors and solid for players? Is there something like that?
I'm not saying TCG boxes are excellent value, in case that was confusing. It's just that OCG boxes are worse value.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to make your money back from boxes or else it wouldn't make any economic sense. EV on TCG boxes is much better than the OCG on average. The only set I can think of that was close to returning your box was maybe Crossover Breaker on release if you managed to buy it for retail, and you also pulled 0 Yugioh cards.
I think it's just far more complicated than anyone wants to admit. It's probably true. I mean, it's just something that everyone has an idea of what they would like it to be, but ultimately, if that idea would work, is something that most people simply don't know. They just say, and I'm including myself here. Like sometimes I just say, like, I wish it was like that, but whether that would actually work for us, I don't know.
In the TCG, if you pull the best meta cards, you can get a large portion of your money back on your box. But in the OCG, it's not a question of if you lose value on your box. It's a question of if you're losing 95% of your money or only 60%.
Okay.
So if buying boxes is such a terrible financial idea, then why do we buy them?
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't have a great answer for this still. The reason I buy a box or multiple boxes of every set is not because I think it is good value. It's a small sample size, but I have some box openings as B-roll on the channel. For example, if you look at the Alliance Insight video.
I mean, honestly, I think it's just that people should be willing to pay money for their hobbies. Should be the reason, right? Because we've talked about it earlier where economically it makes no sense that a box on average pluses, right? Like that can never be the case, because then people wouldn't be selling those boxes for that price. That's just not how it works, right? Like you buy a sealed product, you open it, it loses money, right? That is something that it works like that for basically everything, unless you get very lucky, right? Like you buy anything these days and open it, it's gonna lose some value, right? Because you want to use the thing, right?
I opened 3 boxes of quarter century art collection at 350 yuan or $49
Wow.
each, and I got about $15 back from 3 boxes. You can say I got killed on those boxes, but I don't think that, because this is normal. I have spent thousands on boxes and to this day have never opened a box aside from the deck build sets where I got half of the value of my box back, even with QCRs pulled. I buy a box of every set because I'm essentially willing to donate to Konami every couple of months to support my favorite hobby. But I don't think most players are like me. People still talk about how much value they got from a box, but not really in terms of plussing just by trying to lose less. If I had to guess, I would say there are 3 primary...
This is I guess not an outlook on this thing that a lot of people have in the TCG, I don't think. Like, this is not going to be a very common sentiment.
Reasons, with the last 2 being a cultural difference. Keep in mind, my experience with the OCG is limited to big cities in East Asia because that is where I have lived. I'm sure if you go to more rural areas, then the situation is different. The first one would be donators, the whales. I'm talking about the people that buy multiple cases at a time. There are massively rich, ultra wealthy.
Donate is a wrong word. Yeah, I mean, not a great choice of words. Basically, what they were trying to say is they are willing to support their hobby. Essentially, mostly that, right? Because they're not donating, they're getting something back. They're still getting cards. They still get the fun of opening the box, the thrill of maybe opening a cool QCR that they were hunting for or whatever, all that. You know, they're getting all of that. They're not donating. They're just like willing to spend money on the hobby without expecting to get that money back, right?
People in every country. Maybe not as many playing Yu-Gi-Oh in some compared to others, but I can't prove if there's a difference between countries. So,
which I feel like is like more. It's something that I feel like in other hobbies that aren't so in the like collectible space, I feel like this would be normal. Like, I don't know, if you had a different hobby where you have to buy something in order to pursue that hobby, like whatever it is, like when you buy something, you don't expect to plus off of it, right? Like when you buy, I don't know, whatever your hobby is, and you buy gear for that hobby or something, right? You don't expect to be able to sell what you buy for more than what you made. Like you buy a video game, you're not expecting to sell that video game for more than you bought it. Or you buy, someone said golf clubs, you don't expect to be able to sell those for more than what you paid for it. And I guess that's how they view it, right? Which, yeah, I suppose it's not in every aspect. It's not a perfect comparison. But to an extent, that's what it is, right? Like if you play Yu-Gi-Oh, you, like, for the most part, you are gonna lose money on that hobby. It is not something that you that you're gonna plus off of for the most part, unless you like put in a lot of, I guess, like work for it. But that's not really the hobby at that point. Like for like vendors that profit off of Yu-Gi-Oh are doing that because they actively work this thing. Like this is not their hobby. Their hobby is not to play Yu-Gi-Oh. Their work is to like buy Yu-Gi-Oh cards at like cheap and sell them for more and so on and so forth. But like the underlying hobby of playing Yu-Gi-Oh is something that is gonna lose you money in the long run. I think the problem, quote unquote, with Yu-Gi-Oh is not that it costs money or that it loses you money. I think the problem that we're facing is that seemingly other TCGs are losing you less money, right? I think that's the part where we lose, like as Yu-Gi-Oh, that's where we lose players because they're like, okay, yeah, this hobby is just like relatively similar to another, to like from the outside perspective, whether you play Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic or Pokemon or One Piece or whatever, it's the TCG space, right? They are relatively similar hobbies. And so it's just like when one hobby is significantly more expensive than the other one, that's going to make it look worse in comparison, right? And so like that's some, I think it's not, I don't think we should look at making playing Yu-Gi-Oh profitable, because that's never going to happen. It is a hobby. It is a money sink. You know, you have a hobby that's going to cost you money for like 99.9% of hobbies. It's just that for Yu-Gi-Oh in the TCG space, there's other card games that are kind of close to it, and they are seemingly cheaper to play, which is making them to some people more attractive.
I'll treat it as the same for transparency's sake. The other two are cultural differences. The first is that it is normal to buy random products in East Asia, at least. I don't know if Southeast Asia is the same because I don't have a friend there to answer my question, but I can say for certain this happens in China, Japan, and South Korea. The West is in general very bad at monetizing this part of human desire. In a previous video, I said people have gamble culture, and I truly misspoke when I said that. It's not gamble culture, it's the normalization of the purchase of random goods. That is distinct from gambling because you always get an item from a franchise you love. I feel like this is true to some extent. I also feel like this is becoming more normal, I would say. I do think, I don't know if this has always been like this, but I do think the amount of people that are just like opening boxes, whether it's Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon or other card games, because they're chasing a certain card. Maybe it's also just because of like the internet being way more prevalent than back in the day, but it feels like that is happening more these days. Because like, look, it's literally the same thing in Pokemon in the regards that like Pokemon boxes are also neg, right? You neg on Pokemon boxes if you open them, right? But people still want to open them because they want to pull that fancy card they're looking for themselves, right? Like this is something that they are willing to do. No one is expecting all the vendors to open all the Pokemon boxes for you so that you can buy your chase card, your Rockets Mewtwo or whatever the most recent one is, for a solid retail price. You know, like no one or like most people aren't doing that, right? Like it's like the people that really want those cards are willing to pay the box price to open it themselves, and then it's not like the vendor's responsibility to get the cards out there, I suppose. You know what I mean? Where it feels like in Yu-Gi-Oh, this is something that that is like that's the normal thing, right? Like the set comes out, everyone expects like all the big vendors to just rip open all those cases, and just everyone buys the singles. So maybe it is a cultural difference, not only just between OCG and TCG, but also just between Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Which I guess would make it so, like maybe that's the collector thing, right? Maybe that's more of a collector thing than anything else, right? Maybe it would be less of a problem if Yu-Gi-Oh had more collectors, which maybe you can attract more collectors by making more chase cards. Or maybe it's just difficult for Yu-Gi-Oh to have more collectors because it's just not as strong of an IP as Pokemon or even One Piece. You know, those are two really, really big IPs that I don't know if Yu-Gi-Oh has the same level of collectability
And I don't know if it could have. I mean, maybe it could have.
Examples of this would be gachapons or K-pop photo cards, various anime merchandise, and also pop-up shops. The last reason is that TCGs
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Japan a couple of times. This stuff is everywhere.
are just
And it's probably
mainstream
not
hobbies
just Japan.
in East Asia. Local game stores are already extremely rare in TCG regions compared to the OCG. It's not hard to find good players living in areas without a local. When I was living in USA, there were no locals within a 40-mile radius of me, even though I lived in a city. China in particular has changed a lot. I left China in 2014, but when I was a child, you had to go to 2 specific areas in my city to play, and now there are locals everywhere. Big cities in East Asia have a very high local density, as in 20 or more locals within a 30-minute metro ride. The plaza I personally go to has over a dozen locals in that mall alone, and to my knowledge, there is nowhere in the entire West that has that. There are a lot more.
Yeah, the Akihabara is quite the experience, especially as a TCG player.
Games such as UA or
This is unfortunately something that like we can't compare ourselves to because these hobbies are so much more mainstream over there.
White shorts that people play as opposed to Western countries where they are almost dead. Because so many players play card games in general, it's possible to collect players from other games, especially considering Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a top 3 most popular TCG consistently. And this becomes immediately obvious if you've ever attended an OCG release day. I work Saturday, so I can't get to locals early, which means I never have anywhere to sit. By the time I get to locals, dozens of locals are too full for me to sit down because there are so many players on new pack release date. So I have to backseat my friends' games instead of playing myself. TCGs are just very mainstream. I'm not the only one who goes to locals after work. It's pretty normal to see 30-plus-year-old players coming in after work. Or
why did you say 30 plus? Why would 30 plus not be normal? Bro, I turned 30 in less than 2 months. Why didn't you say like 40 plus?
Teenagers in secondary school playing consistently.
I'm sure your point would have been the same if you just said 40 plus.
The age range of the OCG is much larger. I would say I'm probably closer to the median age in the OCG, but I was always considered one of the youngest, if not the youngest players at all of my locals, even when I...
This might be genuinely just because maybe this entire TCG thing and anime and stuff just started a little bit earlier in Japan, or like in Asia in general, where like they have a little bit of a head start on us, because it does feel like it's growing, and it also does feel like these hobbies and the median age of people that enjoy those hobbies, it'll grow, right? Like, I mean, of course, currently there's not a lot of 40 plus 50 plus people playing Yu-Gi-Oh, even though there are some, which is always cool to see. But like, the older we get, the more it's going to be normalized, right? Like this is going to be like the older you get, the more you're like, okay, this hobby is not tied to age. It has nothing to do with, like, I'm not going to stop playing this game just because I turned 30 or 35. You know, as long as I'm enjoying it, why would you not just do what you enjoy independently of your age, right? In this case, right? So like, this is something that obviously it takes time. This is a cultural development, I think, that like card games are growing. I also don't think it is a coincidence that other card games are spawning and doing well at the moment, because this is just a result of card games becoming more mainstream in general. You know, like this is a great thing that's happening. At least I feel like, is that card games in general are becoming more like normal, and it's like it's these days it is completely normal for even people that are older and not like 16 anymore to play a trading card game. You know, it's just like, and why wouldn't it be like, a lot of people used to collect all sorts of stuff. Why wouldn't they collect like trading cards of an IP that they liked, or like
had left Canada 2 years ago.
I'm 16 match. I mean, I'm not saying like there's no young people anymore. I'm obviously always happy to see young people join as well. I'm just saying like the community grows, and like as people get older, it becomes more and more normal for older people to also be playing card games, which it should be, of course.
As a result, I think if OCG rarities were implemented in the TCG, this is what would happen. OCG rarities would cause box prices to go down. Then, a lot less people would buy boxes. This causes stores to lose a lot of revenue and thus either shut down or stop supporting Yu-Gi-Oh, which would lead to the eventual death of Yu-Gi-Oh locals in the West. Some of you may be thinking, well, why do other Western games not have this problem? What about Pokemon? Why is Yu-Gi-Oh so expensive, but Pokemon so cheap? Well, Pokemon is the world's biggest IP, and it is also a more extreme version of OCG in the West. The ratio of players who buy Pokemon cards is almost entirely collectors, while the people who buy Yu-Gi-Oh are almost all players. The actual expected value on Pokemon boxes is trash too. It's an even worse idea financially to buy Pokemon boxes than Yu-Gi-Oh boxes, but there are just so many casual fans. Despite the poor...
I've heard about this. I cannot personally confirm this because I have never bought a Pokemon box, but I have talked to people about this, and they did say, like, opening Pokemon boxes is crazy, Nick. Like, you do not plus off of Pokemon boxes. The expected value when you're opening a Pokemon box is also trash, but you like, people are willing to do it because they are chasing that high, you know, because they are chasing. I feel like the range of cards you can pull in Pokemon might be even bigger, where you have, like, at worst you can pull like the highest rarity of a certain card, and it might be like $3, but then if you hit the, I don't know which set, I remember some of the most iconic chase cards in Pokemon, like the Umbreon VMAX or whatever, like the super fancy alt art, which is, I think, like 4 digits. And then you have, like, might be even more now. You have the newest set, I think, is the Rocket set, which has, like, the Team Rocket's Mewtwo in, like, a super fancy looking version. And, like, you pull those, it's like crazy, right? And so, like, people really like to open boxes because it's literally gacha, right? It's just like I think they put it pretty well, like the normalization of just, like, they have fun opening these packs. They pay for the experience, basically, right? They're not just like, oh, on average the expected value of this box is not great, so if I want this Umbreon, I should just buy it on Card Market for $1,000. They have fun opening this stuff, right? And so I guess the underlying question is that just because it's Pokemon? Is that just because Pokemon is the bigger IP and so on and so forth and has more collectors? Or is it also partially because Pokemon is doing something with these cards that makes it more fun to open, right? And this has nothing to do with it's Asia right now, because I'm talking about Western Pokemon culture. In Western Pokemon culture is like this, right? Because Pokemon boxes are not good value to open, but still people are storming the shelves. You know, we've all seen the videos of, like, people running into the Walmarts and fighting over Pokemon boxes. They're fighting over a product that is negative EV to open. And they have, like, a huge scalping problem because of it, which is just another like topic, right? That part is terrible about it, of course. So, like, even the Pokemon model has its own flaws and issues that come with it, but, like, the only thing that it doesn't have is the problem that the cards are not that expensive, right? Like the low rarity versions, because everyone is shooting for the high rarity versions, and there's so many collectors in the space. The collectors can then unload all those low rarity versions of cards because they don't need them, you know? Like, they don't care, because for, like, let's just say the Rocket's Mewtwo or whatever is, like, meta relevant. Like, the lowest rarity version of that thing is not something that collectors will look for, and, like, the collectors on the way to pull the fancy version, they'll pull, like, tons of the others, and then those are up for grabs, basically, right? So the question is, can Yu-Gi-Oh do a similar thing? Because I would argue one reason why Pokemon packs are more fun to open maybe is because they have a lot prettier cards. For some of these, you know, the full art thing. There's a lot of full arts here. Like, genuinely, even on this page, I'm looking at this Noibat or this Furret or this Articuno. None of these are, like, chase cards in terms of the value, right? There's, like, $3, $4, $9, $7 for the Veilord or whatever. But, like, I feel like if you open this, you don't feel bad about that. You know, this is a pretty looking card. You know, it might have some sentimental value to you because you pulled it, and it's a really pretty card, you know. Maybe there is some more that Yu-Gi-Oh could do to make the product more fun to open, even when you're opening it at a loss. Because that's the thing with all of these card games is you are always opening this stuff on a loss on average. That is how card games operate. That's how it works. You're not opening Pokemon boxes for like plus.
Expected value, the demand for sealed boxes exceeds supply by such a significant amount that Pokemon even has a scalping problem. It's an entirely unique phenomenon caused by having
full arts don't fix the problem. Pokemon is just more mainstream. See, it's easy to say that, but I think it's hard to back that up. I think it's very difficult to reach a conclusion on this. So that's why I'm just throwing out some thoughts here. This is not like, I'm not saying like this would be better, this would work for Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm not saying it wouldn't work. I'm just saying like we don't know because it hasn't been done. Maybe it won't work for Yu-Gi-Oh! Because no one's collecting or not enough people are collecting Yu-Gi-Oh! And most people just play it. Or maybe it would. Who knows? Like I have no idea. I have no idea whether it would or not. I would like to see it being tried though. I would like if there was something done in this regard, and just to see how it works.
that many fans.
You know?
Finally, I just want to go over 3 potential solutions that are brought up and why I don't think they will work.
How could full art be played? I don't know how they would make it work, but like genuinely, I think for Yu-Gi-Oh, of course, it would be difficult to still have all this card text, but like even if you just use, I'm just using the Raisin as an example because it's just on the thingy here. If you just extend the artwork of the card across everything on the card that isn't like the name, the attribute, the stars, the text box, wouldn't that be a dope looking card? Like you can slap a text box on an alt art, on like a full art, you know? Because look at Overrush Rare. This, for example, right? There's basically the same amount of space for the text here as it is on a Yu-Gi-Oh card. And it just extends past the borders. You know, there's no reason why this wouldn't at least be worth trying, I feel.
The first one is TCG player purchase limits. A TCG player limit will never be implemented in real life because TCG player would just be losing money, but it is something that is implemented on other online platforms. This is a change that would primarily affect the United States. Some expensive cards aren't Konami's faults. Historically, cards in decks will be expensive due to the substitution effect. Secondary market investors will buy everything that doesn't have a reprint for any deck that will be good. Think about Rosin or Trekt or Small Noir after reprints for their archetype. If Konami reprints almost everything in a deck, people will still just buy up everything that isn't reprinted. The way it works in China is that you cannot buy more.
It's like impossible to make like just a deck cheaper by reprinting one card, because it's just like if you reprint Engraver, the demand for playing Fiendsmith just goes up by so much that now Tract is expensive. So basically, they'd have to reprint everything at the same time always.
More than 3 copies of a card in a single order. Obviously, you can make more than one order, but since the margins are so small and you have to pay shipping on each order, it ends up discouraging a lot of buyouts. As opposed to the TCG, where you have people living the American dream buying 500 Dark Beckoning Beasts on TCG Player. Even with purchase limits, it's unlikely to help because the American consumers aren't changing. If there's money to be made, there will be buyouts, even if it takes more effort.
Yeah.
The second is to allow the TCG to use OCG cards. I've seen this as a suggestion as well, and I think it would hurt both communities significantly. The first one is that TCG cards would drop in value because a large quantity of cheaper cards have been introduced in the market, which would crash the prices of sealed product. They won't be as low as the OCG countries due to arbitrage, but it will reduce the TCG's prices. It's the same as the OCG rarity scenario. That's bad for the longevity of the game. The second is that the OCG market would get destroyed because our cards would get significantly more expensive if TCG players started buying them up. I'm not saying this from a selfish perspective where I would have to pay more. If the game were more expensive, I would still be able to afford to play, but people in Asia have less disposable income than many Western countries. The game in OCG is inexpensive compared to the TCG, but it's not a one-to-one conversion because we have less spending power.
That's true.
A lot of players would struggle to keep playing over here if the cards suddenly became a lot more expensive.
That is true.
The third is to make Yu-Gi-Oh more collectible. This is the best solution in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to implement.
Yeah.
There's really just no way to do that because the game is too complex, and thus there's no way to write anime duels anymore.
I think one underlying thing that is like, this is not something they can fix, but like, if you think Pokemon or if you think One Piece, those are two games that have one thing that differentiates them from Yu-Gi-Oh! In a way that they reprint the same characters over and over and over again with just different effects, right? That is normal. It's like, this is a Pikachu, this is a Pikachu, this is a Pikachu. It's completely normal that they all have different effects. Same with Charizard and same with Monkey D. Luffy in One Piece, right? This is just not something that Yu-Gi-Oh! Does, right? Like, this is, of course, sometimes they make retrains or so on and so forth, or alt arts, but fundamentally, Yu-Gi-Oh! Makes new cards with new characters, right? Like, this, it's always new characters. It's not like the same character, but on a different card. Because that is just not how Yu-Gi-Oh! Works, like, fundamentally, right? There's no one card with the same name as another card, with very, very, very few and niche exceptions, right? Where like one card is treated as another card, like Fusion Sub is polymerization or whatever. But like we don't have an equivalent of Pikachu, Charizard, and Luffy and stuff like that, right? Which I think that is partially also why Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not that collectible, right? Because of course, yeah, you're gonna say like, okay, we have Blue Eyes, we have Dark Magician, we have Exodia, which sure, you know, they can reprint a cool looking Blue Eyes every once in a while, or they can make like legacy support for the deck, which that is something that does work. You know, they do this relatively consistently and every once in a while, but it is not the underlying concept of the game, right? Where not every single set can have like 5 new Blue Eyes cards, because that's not going to work. Whereas like in One Piece or in Pokemon, every single set they can throw in, if they have the slight feeling that the set is not collectible enough, they can just throw in a Charizard. They can throw in a Pikachu. For One Piece, same thing. If the set is underwhelming, if they feel like it's not good enough, throw in a cool looking Luffy alt art, you know, and it's done, right? So Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been trying this just a little bit, and I do want to say I think alt arts have been a phenomenal concept in Yu-Gi-Oh! As well. I feel like it's been proven that alt arts are good. People want alt arts, and alt arts have the capability of providing value to the box, right? Like in Rarity Collection, for example, the alt arts, almost all of them are chase cards, and almost every single alt art, if you pull them in your box, is going to make your box worth it, right? Like the alt arts from Rarity Collection have proven that this is a working concept for Yu-Gi-Oh! As well. So this is something that, for example, I would like to see it tried with core sets. I would like there to be chase cards like that in core sets. That could make it collectible. Those are arguably some of the most collectible cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the really cool looking alt arts. I think that would be a solution to make Yu-Gi-Oh! More collectible. And I personally, I don't see a reason to wait with alt arts, because the way it's currently being done is a card is printed and then it receives an alt art like months or years down the line. Why wait? If you know that Dia Bellstar is gonna be a main character card for like the full year, and you're gonna make good support for it, it's gonna be a relevant card. Why not put like in Age of Overlord? Why not make regular Dia Bellstar an ultra rare instead of a secret, and throw in a QCR only alt art of Dia Bellstar? Why not? That could work. You know, I'm not saying that's a guarantee that it could work, but I feel like that'd be a pretty good shout. I feel like that'd be a pretty good idea, because then it'd be like, people want that alt art. People are chasing that alt art from Rarity Collection. It is I think the most expensive alt art in Rarity Collection is the Dia Bellstar. I think the most expensive QCR, maybe even in the set. That might not be true, but it was definitely the most expensive alt art when I looked last. And I don't see a reason why that wouldn't work on initial release of the Abelstar. And that could have done a lot of positive for Age of Overlord format, right? Because in just a hypothetical here, right? You make the normal Diabellstar a lower rarity, so it's more affordable, and you soak up that you basically make it so that the box doesn't lose a lot of value because you implement the alt art as a chase card instead. And I think that, to me, that sounds like something that could work and could make it overall just better for everybody, because the collectors now have a really cool chase card and the players now have a cheaper version of the Abelstar, which makes the game slightly more affordable. And then, like, if you find the right balance on this sort of concept, I think it could work.
If there's no anime for the actual game, not talking about Rush Duels, then there's no easy way to make it appealing to new players. One thing they can try to do is to make a lore anime, but I don't think it would work. I would watch a lore anime since I already know about these archetypes as an active player, but I don't know how many normal anime fans would watch a Diabellstar or a Visas or Alba's lore anime. And even if they did, how many of those fans would actually buy cards? Another way to make the hobby more collectible would be to make an extremely high rarity card to give collectors a chase when opening packs. Yeah. A recent example of this is the Magia, but not only do they receive negative backlash from a large number of consumers, but a large number of collectors have also lost confidence in high rarity current because of reprinting Starlights as QCRs. At the time, I didn't think it was
they haven't done a great job at at the collector front, I think, recently.
That big of a deal, but in retrospect, that's probably one of Konami's biggest mistakes in recent times. Personally, Ghost Rares and Old School Ultimate Rares are two of my favorite rarities that are now lost to time. But that is
I feel like currently Yu-Gi-Oh, with how it's been handled, maybe not even just like the last few years, but like in general over the time, I don't know if we've done the best to attract collectors to the game. Because I don't know.
It's just my nostalgia speaking, and I don't know how many collectors would be interested in a return for those two rarities.
Once again, this might be my inner boomer speaking, but this was actually peak, man. Like, and once again, Treeborn Frog, just to use this example on the screen here, it had a rare printing in Shadow of Infinity. A rare printing. It was affordable for everybody. It was an expensive rare. I remember. Like, I don't think it was a cheap rare, but it was definitely decently affordable. But then there was this version of it, which just goes so hard. Even until today, it goes hard.
They could also try experimenting with full arts or new rarities, but I have a hard time imagining a rarity beyond Starlight, and Yu-Gi-Oh is a hard game to make full arts for because text clarity is very important for Yu-Gi-Oh. I really tried to think of a way the TCG could make this work. How can you make the game cheaper, more affordable, and also preserve the health of local game stores? And honestly, I have no idea. You can maybe adopt some more of the OCG accessories, but I don't know if those would sell well because the accessories released in the TCGs, such as the Hero Collection, do very poorly.
I think it's very hard to say. I mean, that stuff also just doesn't look good. Come on, man.
I feel for you all. I really do. Because I returned to Yu-Gi-Oh! As a TCG player, and I've also bought $100 decks. I still have my original tier deck that got banned and is now worthless. I do not hate the player base, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Is my absolute favorite thing.
I think we can all agree that the game would highly benefit from more collectors entering the space. If that's one thing that we can agree on at the end of this video, because I know it's a very controversial topic and it's very difficult for us to judge, especially for me personally, because I don't have that sort of economic background. You know, I have like just a very, very small understanding of these sort of concepts. It's just like I'm trying to gather, you know, some of the ideas and think about which one could work and which one couldn't. But ultimately, I don't know enough to really say for sure. But I feel like if Yu-Gi-Oh was more attractive to collectors, that would benefit all of us, because that would mean more product is being opened, and more product being opened means that the cards that the collectors are not chasing for are available in higher quantities to the players, and that would make it more affordable to play the game, because boxes are then more fun to open, and that would make it as a whole just better, you know. So the question, I suppose, is how do we get there? You know, we've discussed through some suggestions here, like you know, alt arts, full arts, chase cards in general that are more like, because of course Dominus Impulse is a chase card. You know, Dominus Impulse is a chase card in a Yu-Gi-Oh box. The problem is that Dominus Impulse was the only, to this day, it is the only accessible or the only playable version. The lowest rarity version of the card was the chase card, which I feel like that's where it clashes, right? That's where the collector's market and the player market, they crash, and it doesn't work out because the players need this card. The players are chasing for this card, and that's why the lowest rarity available is the most is like way too expensive already as a baseline, right? There should be a world where there is a cheaper version of Dominus Impulse, but the card that people are chasing for still makes up for the value. You know what I mean? How do we get to that world? I don't know. I don't know enough, but I don't know. I feel like maybe with a little copium is that they are taking baby steps towards that direction at the moment with the alt arts, but like we are also just we're way too far away from this at the moment to call it like progress, I think. Yeah, but I think full arts, alt arts, more chase cards, more fun to open products, right? Like, because if you can pull some really cool looking cards, even if they're not worth that much, then maybe it still makes it for a more fun experience to open boxes. But yeah, good video. I really liked it. I really liked the OCG perspective on things. I really liked how this got us talking and discussing in a reasonable fashion. I always like that sort of thing. I'm gonna link you guys the video in chat, and you guys give some love to Sunny, who's always posting some interesting takes from the OCG. So you guys go ahead and subscribe to Sunny. The video link is in chat right now. Do me a favor and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.